Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. I brought my own pulpit. How cool is that?
Look at that.
So we are going to sing Reckless Love and Great Are You, Lord. So if you have your lyric books and want that out, you can when we're done here. I'm going to be in Acts chapter 23, 26, and 10. So Acts 23, 26, and 10. I just want to ask the question, or have you ask yourself this question: what am I praying for? What am I praying for? So what if I told you all today that you are sitting here in this theater because two people prayed? Two people prayed. You're going to hear me say this a lot this week, but this is one of my favorite locations in Israel. And it's one of my favorites because we have a number of different things that are coalescing right here in this community. And that might be the biggest word you hear me say all week long, coalescing. There's a number of things coming together here. Late in the book of Acts, because Paul had preached the good news to the Gentiles, not just the Jewish people, he was arrested and then falsely accused of breaking the law. Riots broke out, and he was taken to Jerusalem under arrest. Roman guards had to follow him there. A trial was set up before the Jewish High Council, and the council could not agree on what to do with Paul. Some wanted to kill him, others wanted to release him, so they sent him back to Jerusalem until they can figure out what to do. Acts 23 verse 11 says this: "That night the Lord appeared to Paul and said, 'Be encouraged, Paul. Just as you have been a witness to me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome as well.'" So this was Paul's first clue. He was headed to Rome while he was in jail in Jerusalem. But how would he get to Rome? I mean, he was stuck in prison in Jerusalem. Well, the next day, Paul was sent here to Ceaserea under the guard of 200 Roman soldiers and 70 mounted troops. So talk about God working in mysterious ways. Not only was he using prison to get Paul to Rome, he used soldiers from the enemy to protect the message of the cross, which was pretty awesome. For several years, Paul remained in prison here. He was here for years in Caesarea, most likely in one of the prison cells that we will eventually see over that way at Herod's palace. He eventually was brought into this auditorium, this theater, where he would stand trial before his accusers. In Acts 26, King Agrippa arrived, and he wanted to hear from Paul what all the fuss was about. So Paul stood somewhere in this area, maybe down here in the front, and he addressed the crowd that had filled this arena about the accusations that were being made. He told King Agrippa about the day he met Jesus. And remember, he was on a mission now to take the message to the Gentiles. In Acts 26, 13 through 19, Paul says this, again, standing somewhere in this theater: "About noon, Your Majesty, I was on the road. A light from heaven, brighter than the sun, shone down on me and my companions. We all fell down, and I heard a voice saying to me in Aramaic, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is useless for you to fight against my will.' 'Who are you, Lord?' I asked. And the Lord replied, 'I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Now get to your feet, for I have appeared to you to appoint you as my servant and witness. Tell people that you have seen me, and tell them what I will show you in the future, and I will rescue you both from your own people and the Gentiles. Yes, I am sending you to the Gentiles to open their eyes so they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God. Then they will receive forgiveness for their sins and be given a place among God's people who are set apart by faith in me.' And so, King Agrippa, I obeyed that vision from heaven." After that, because Paul had appealed to Caesar, he was sent across the Mediterranean, which is the sea right over here, all the way to Rome. And literally, we may not be standing here today were it not for Paul being arrested and sent over to Rome, where the gospel then would spread around to the known world. But you might ask, okay, but where are the two people that prayed? I mentioned we might be here today because two people prayed. Well, Paul's story began in Acts 9, when God called him to the message of the Gentiles. The problem was, none of the apostles None of the ones Christ left in charge of his mission had yet to open themselves up to the Gentiles. Gentiles had not yet received the gospel. Someone had to open the door. And that's where Peter and Cornelius enter the picture. Okay? In Acts chapter 10, verses 1 and 2, it says, in Caesarea, there lived a Roman army officer named Cornelius, who was a captain of the Italian regiment. So somewhere over in the city, in the ruins of the city, which is beyond that way, Cornelius lived. He was a devout, God-fearing man, as was everyone in his household. He gave generously to the poor and prayed regularly to God. And one day, while Cornelius was praying to God, he had a vision. And the vision was to send 2 of his people up to Joppa, where we were, up in Tel Aviv, 33 or so miles south of here, to find a man named Peter, one of the 12 original disciples of Jesus. So the next day, these men went to Joppa, and on that same day, Peter was praying. He was praying on a roof, and during that prayer, he had a vision as well. And in that vision, a sheet was lowered down in front of him, and on it were all the unclean animals, and God said, eat these animals. And Peter said, no, I've never eaten anything unclean. And God said, don't call unclean what I have made clean. And that was the vision of what God gave him. The same vision was repeated 3 different times, and just then, in perfect timing, the men Cornelius sent showed up at his door looking for Peter, and the Lord told Peter to go with them. So the next day, Peter makes his way down here with 2 of Cornelius' men, all the way from Joppa, all the way up here to Caesarea. And the vision that Peter had was more than just, these unclean foods are now clean. The vision was also, these unclean people are now receiving the gospel. That what you have called unclean, the Gentiles, I am going to make clean. So Acts 10:28, Peter told them, here in the house of Cornelius, you know it is against our laws for a Jewish man to enter a Gentile home like this or to associate with you. But God has shown me that I should no longer think of anyone as impure or unclean. So Peter asked them, well, why am I here? And Cornelius told him about the vision he had. We want to hear the message of the good news, he said. So Peter preached a sermon here in Caesarea, and the whole household put their faith in Jesus. And as far as we know, right here in Caesarea, some of the very first Gentiles were baptized into the faith. Right here in Caesarea. Then in Acts 10:34 through 36, Peter said these words, I see very clearly that God shows no favoritism. In every nation, he accepts those who fear him and do what is right. This is the message of good news for the people of Israel, that there is peace with God through Jesus Christ, who is Lord of all. It was just a few chapters later where the apostles agreed to open the door wide open to the Gentiles. Then decades later, Paul would stand in this auditorium within eyeshot of the home where Peter would welcome the first Gentiles into the faith. And then Paul was called to take that same message of Jesus to the Gentiles across the Mediterranean to Rome, where it would eventually go all the way across the ocean to places like St. Louis, Missouri, and Wyoming, and Texas, and San Diego, California, where we now hold the gospel because 2 people prayed and met here in Caesarea, which led to Paul, which led to Rome, which led to us. We are here today because 2 people prayed. Because 2 people sought God, Peter and Cornelius, and God took their prayers, their seeking of him, united them together to reach the world. I mean, talk about the power of prayer that was happening in this place. So the next time that you feel like you should pray, the next time for whatever reason you think about prayer, the next time someone comes to your mind that you say, I should pray for them, think about this place that you are standing now, or sitting. This place in Caesarea, and all the things that had to happen to get you into this theater today. And you're here. You are sitting in this theater Because two people took time to pray. And then when the Lord spoke, they obeyed. So never, ever, ever, never take for granted the power of one prayer in your life. It might lead to a moment like this for someone else. So what have you been praying for? Or who have you been praying for? I bet Peter and Cornelius had no idea that a group of 50 people would be sitting in this arena one day because they prayed. And I bet you have no idea who might be sitting in the arena of the believers one day because you prayed. So don't give up praying, because there's power in just one prayer. We're going to sing a song as best we can outside of the roarious laughter and cheering. I think we should, just to fit in, we should all cheer one time. Let's everybody just cheer. Let's, yeah. Makes me feel better. So if you want to get your lyric book aside, we're going to sing Reckless Love. I think it's fitting that Jesus, in his reckless love for us, sought us out and pursued us right to this place. Right to this place. And we're also going to sing Great Are You, Lord. I might give you the mic too, so they might pick you up a little bit better. So if you want to leave your headsets on, Devin can have the mic. It might help you out a little bit. Let's go ahead and worship the Lord today. Oh, are you for real?
Yeah. I'll just have to sit or something.